Welcome everybody to a new webinar with Expertise 360 starring Paul Gagne, posturologist and strength coach for 40 years and counting now.
41 this year.
41 this year, yeah. So like always on a Expertise 360 webinar, feel free to ask your question in the chat. We'll go through all questions at the end of the webinar. So as soon as you have a question in your mind, please write it down in the chat and we'll cover them at the end of the webinar. So for those who don't know Expertise 360, we're a web platform on continuing education. So we do have now content in English, also an online course with Paul on Beyond Physical Preparation. It's a new training system that he started to give public, but he's been doing it for about, let's say, 41 years now. So it's a combination of posturology, strength coach, and everything. So go and check it out to see directly on our website. Free, we do have a lot of free stuff as well. So without further ado, Paul, I'm giving you the stage, and please write your question in the chat, and we'll speak to each other at the end of the webinar. Enjoy, guys.
Thank you, guys, for being there. As usual, I'm going to speak a lot more than I'll show slides. The goal today is to show you exercise and also the methodology behind why there's a lot of myth about training for the abdominals. There's a school of thought of only stabilizing. There's a school of thought that just lifting weights, heavy squat, carries is enough. Both are right, but you still have to understand the real biomechanic of the spine. If you deal with a golfer that does movement, if he only does plank and carries, there's not a lot of transfer into his rotational movement, also as injury prevention. My main work with my pro athletes and Olympic athletes over the last 41 years, and this is what I'm pretty well known on, is to make them last. The agency that hired me in '94 for hockey, they like that when their players like Marc-André Fleury, it's his 20th year, they're very happy about that because it gives for me, it's great because I love it. Mark will not need a wheelchair after his career, but also the agency has like a very good player that stays in the NHL, and other players, they see that, what kind of training. Again, this is just what I'm going to show you the next hour. There's a bit of theory, but again, for a first time, I only kept 20 slides. That's pretty good for me. But I want to make sure that all the stuff that you'll see on the slide, you will see more of what you do in my little lab. Today, I had to keep the garage door closed because usually I keep it open, but we moved to in the desert here. We think we're in Qatar. It's like 35 degrees in Montreal today, Celsius. But you'll see, I hope the lighting is good and the sound. And I have a little surprise for you. I got one of my dear athletes, and she became a very good friend of mine over the years. I met her, she was 8 years old with her two sisters, gold medalists, the 2014 Winter Olympics, silver medalist in Pyeongchang, many-time world champ, World Cup winner, and now new world champ in free ride that she just switched last year. And she didn't even wait 1 year. She had to win the whole thing right away. And it's just the beginning. Justine Four-Lapointe, she's going to join me. She will not be able to talk. Merci, Dixie. And she trained very hard this morning because she's getting ready for a big bike tour in Tuscany. And poor girl, I torture her with the Desmotex mixed with bike. But she told me that she will do her best for the abs, and I know she will do well. The technique I'm going to show you today, there's a bit of movement. A lot of it is based on Dr. Guy Voyer from Soma Training. That really was a game changer when we started to implement what Dr. Voyer taught us in the late 90s. Same as posturology with Dr. Brico. And that was, I would say, my main two big difference of what I was doing previously the first 25 years of my career. And that's very important to understand that when you do analytical segmental reinforcement, not only you work muscle, you're working a lot of fascia and you're working your brain. See, as an example, when Justine was competing in the moguls, there's a lot of aerial. They have to do 2 jumps. They're judged, and at high speed, it's cold. There's a lot of perturbation. And to be able to do these movement, obviously she needs to practice a lot on jumps and also on water ramps. But in the gym, we have to also, after the first phase of segmental reinforcement, we have to give a quality to the muscle and the fascia, meaning do you need speed, do you need power, do you need more strength? In their case, it's kind of a mixture of both because they need a lot of proprioception through their brain. Their posture has to be well balanced, but also they need to be able to do the movement through their abs. If they only do side bridges, planks, and stuff like this, it will be way too slow for what they need to do. Again, everything is good. If you're a power lifter, you don't need to do that much high speed movement with your abs. But if you're an Olympic athlete, a hockey player, a sprinter, you need to do them because eccentrically it will load you. 2 weeks ago, Justine, it's not part of her program, but she was training with one of my hockey player NHL guys, like 6'4", 220, and he was getting ready for camp. And we do a lot of multi-contraction. We did the Desmo. We do different very high load mixed with high jump, but more horizontal jump. And she told me the day after that the most painful area in her body was her trapezius. It's normal because you jump a lot. And she's very, very good at it. And she didn't want me to lower too much the hurdle. And you're talking about someone at 6'4" with her. And her lower ab, like subumbilical, were really on fire. And it's just to show you, even with a very advanced athlete, it was not part of her preparation. It would have came maybe about in a month from now. I would have started to increase the speed. Just the fact that although she's very trained with her abdominal, just that change of speed and power created, it's a good thing she was well balanced because someone else could have been injured on that. And now I even learned a lesson on that because you tend to forget these athletes are super strong and you tend to, their old periodization used to be, they went to Zermatt in October, then they had the same periodization as the hockey players, but now it's not because her season starts like only in January. But it's a good lesson to learn, but it gave me also something to talk to you about. Always think about speed of contraction and power, especially eccentrically, and that area will be very, very important. Alex, first slide, please. On the first slide, this is Frank Zane. I mean, sadly, we don't see that anymore, but in the old days, every good bodybuilder, they had a very powerful diaphragm and you could see it. And that's crucial to hold your viscera. A very good core or abdominal development comes from a very, very strong diaphragm. And I'll show you a couple of exercises today using different type of airflow restriction. But the most important is when you get an athlete, you get a regular client, what type of exercise you will prescribe will come with your posture. What do you have to work with? If you buy a new house, if you come in my garage, if you want to make an offer on my house, obviously you're going to bring an architect or someone to watch if the basement is okay, if the walls are okay. Next slide, Alex. See, this is the anatomy of the rectus abdominis. This is a cadaver, and there's a lot of link. It's not important to know very much the origin and insertion. It's really important, first of all, you see that most people, the linea alba is not straight. Most people, we have a bit, the guy on the right side has a bit better, but on the left side, he has a scoliosis. And you see that, but if you look at the top near the sternum, at the xiphoid process, the superficial fascia of the pec joins in and attached to the pubic symphysis. It means that if you do a lot of very heavy bench press, a lot of pectoral movement, do not train your abs at the same time because it could create pubalgia. We had that. Many hockey players, they have inflammation of the pubic symphysis because the pubic symphysis, it's like if you see like a jock strap, there's a bone and it's not always straight. And there's a lot of ligaments, and in the groin, there's a lot of little muscle, veins, and artery in that area, and that pulls on it a lot. That's why I wanted that slide to see the link in between the trunk and the pelvis. Next slide, please. Same thing with the internal oblique. If you look at the fibers at the bottom, it's intertwining also with the rib cage, and also it's more posterior. The oblique, and you'll see with the next slide after the external oblique, I always see people doing these straight rotational movement. Try to avoid that, because as you see, there's very little horizontal fiber that connects from your obliques with your transversospinalis. And I've seen a lot of herniated disc through a lot of these rotational. Basically, the obliques are made to do a positive torsion and help in negative torsion, meaning if you're doing a flexion and rotation and an extension and rotation. Very important for golfer, for martial art. I used to be a wrestler. You have to respect these movements. When you throw a baseball, it's not sideways, it's over. If you take a golf swing, it's always negative torsion to positive torsion. Nothing in the body. When you move your body by itself, you will see, you will never move under load into that plane, pure horizontal plane, especially if you're fixed with your feet. If there's rotation, you could get away with it, but generally respect the fibers of the anatomy. Next slide, please. That's the next one is going to be the external oblique. And you see even the fibers are even more vertical. It's like a fan. That's why they're very powerful to create positive torsion, but they help in negative torsion. Every time you do a flexion of the trunk, then you have to be aware that the antagonist, all the erector spinae, the multifidus, all these muscles, very deep layer in your spine are working too, eccentrically. Actually, they're coding the movement. If you have a very, very stiff spine, because you've done too much of stiffness of the spine, you will have a hard time to do these movements, and that could create a lot of shearing force on your disc. Always remember, you're always as strong as the eccentric component of the antagonist. Dr. Jean-Pierre Rolle proved it. The coding movement is, if I do an elbow flexion, it's going to be the eccentric contraction of my elbow extensors, my tricep and anconeus, that will create quality of the movement. Dr. Guy Voyer used to always have with new students, especially in Europe, big in soccer or football back there, they always ask which group of muscle are the most important for precision and kicking the ball. And most of the soccer people, they talk about the quads, but it's actually the hamstring that gives the quality of the movement, especially the eccentric component of the hamstring. If you only train them on a very slow movement and not allowing your foot to move at a high speed and your leg, then your quad will put a lot more tension on their patella tendon, and your pelvis will get more anterior. Now, I'm going to, next slide, Alex. Now, how do we breathe is the most important. See, when you do abdominal, everything is interlocked, intertwined also with the diaphragm. If you're not breathing properly, you will not be able to really recruit the segmental abdominals, very crucial for movement. When someone has a big block of six-pack, but they don't move well because there's 22 axis of your pelvis, then you'll be in trouble. The old bodybuilders like Frank Zane, guys used to train like they were very good posers. If you go on old videos, like 30 years ago, you saw guys that were almost like ballerina. Chris Dickerson and all these guys used to be very elegant. Today, it's like, boom, boom, there's no more movement. They had a way better understanding, and they had a lot less injury. Frank Zane in his late 70s, and he's still in great shape. You look at the old bodybuilders like Robbie Robinson and all these guys. They're in their 70s and 80s. Even Arnold, with all the problem he had with the heart and everything, he's still in decent shape, way more than most of people in their 70s. But these guys, although they were assisted by certain chemicals, we won't go through that route today, but they did a lot of basic exercise. Serge Nubret was one of the examples. All these guys, they had a very tiny waist also, and they did a lot of movement segmental on the floor, like I'll show you today. Now, next slide, Alex. See, those are the center of the breathing. It's all connected with your brain. But if you look at the slide, I won't go too long on that. You will see that it's connected also near your cerebellum, near the medulla oblongata and the pons. And when we're going to start the warm up with Justin, I'm going to show you how to activate these centers to maximize muscle recruitment of the erector spinae longissimus, but also with the abdominals. Next slide, please. See, the posture is the key. If you don't have a good posture, you can't be able to breathe. You can't even to open your rib cage, and that's going to be detrimental. You'll see a lot of people with too much lumbar curvature, like they're kyphotic or sitting down a lot. They're mouth breathers. They can't open. When you breathe in, your diaphragm opens and it closes. They don't have that. Also, many people that have been training for years, they tend to have what we call the paradoxal breathing. And one of the tests we do to test it, we give them a balloon. And it's kind of funny. Some of the athletes we have, they can't inflate because when they inhale, they pull their abs in. And when they exhale, they keep it in because they've been taught of keeping their abdominals in. But you need like a bagpipe. You need to be able to inflate the balloon very quickly through your transversus abdominis and the diaphragm, and also with the help of your obliques, internal oblique, external oblique, and the rectus. They all work together, and all the intercostal muscle. If you go online, you look at Franco Columbu, was Arnold Schwarzenegger's partner. He has like these water bags that we used to take, you put on your head when you have a headache. It's heavy, thick rubber. And we used to put water on it and doing like whatever enemas with it. But also when you had like problem in your, like you want to put like, it's the ancestor of the eating pads. The guy busted it. Franco on YouTube, you'll see within like 30 seconds, he bust that thing. Their lung capacity were tremendous. That's why posture is very important. Now, next slide, please. Justine, viens ici, s'il vous plaît. See, the key is that, juste enlever tes chaussures, s'il te plaît. See, I have the luxury in my garage to have a force plate, but even if you don't have it, the reason why Justine's going to stand on it is because I need like a very good alignment. See, you don't need a force plate. Biotonix, actually, if you're in Quebec, they make a very good system. It's AI now. You just put, the AI puts the dots, and within 5 minutes, you got a report. We all use it a lot, and it's easy. But if you're on the road, you don't have access to it, you just take a plumb line. You want to look, you want to make sure that the athlete is straight, and you want to see the deviation with the gravity. Most people are like the people you'll see on your screen, because they have an anterior scapular plane, meaning their center of mass is deviated. When your center of mass is deviated, your stomach will stick out. And that's the problem, mainly the lower abdominals. When I started to work more with Miss Fitness about 30 years ago, a lot of them came from gymnastic. And in gymnastic, sadly, a lot of girls, they have very, very big lumbar curvature, a lot of hip flexor movement, and a lot of bounding at a very young age. And they have a lot of too much lumbar curvature, and it created a lot of problem and shearing force and tension on the subumbilical abdominals. And that created a lot of problem in their lower back SI joint too. That's why when you analyze someone, you have to make sure that if it's called a pooch belly, a lot of time it's not fat, it's just their pelvis is forward. Most people, when you put them on one leg, will have 1 foot more varus, meaning going outward, and 1 foot more in. Generally, if you're right-handed, when you go on the right leg, it's going to be more out. You'll feel like, oh, you're going outward, and when you're on the left, your malleoli will collapse. And this is what we call a disharmonic foot. How do you fix that? There's many ways. It's a bit beyond the spectrum of this mini webinar, but I have a couple of slides. You could try a bit of VOR, vestibular ocular reflex, activating the foot with different stimulus, like we use a gua sha, we use like a comb, walking on little pebbles activates a lot. But a lot of time, just touching the muscle of your eyes will create an adaptation. Now, next slide, please. That's what happens. See, this slide shows like someone who has valgus foot or flat foot. That creates an internal rotation at the femur, at the ankle, but look at the back. Both, they have too much lumbar curvature. If you do abdominal program with them, you need to be aware of that. If you stimulate too much their hip flexor, or you do too much of supra-umbilical, like too many crunches and stuff, with that, you will aggravate their situation. If you have, and I would say up to 95% of your athletes or even your general population, when you test them with a plumb line or a stick, they'll be in front. I guarantee you. Put them on one leg, one ankle will collapse more than the other. Then you're in that. Then think about working the pelvis more than the trunk. Now, next slide, please. See the effect of sitting posture. Most people now, they sit way too much. And that's the biggest issue we have with very short hip flexor, bad posture. Your brain, you're always looking down. When you look down, you're stimulating a part of the brain. It's called the midbrain that's connected to your flexor chain. For 9 months inside of your mom, you're more in that crunch position, and it's more a natural position, but you need to do specific eye exercise and also stand up and do specific uncoupling or decoaptation exercise to help your spine, like Aldoa from Dr. Guy Voyer. They're one of the magic exercise to create room and also to modify your posture very quickly. Next slide, please. Same with the diaphragm. Basically, if your posture is wrong, like we saw in one of the first slides, you will not be able to expand your diaphragm. And that's going to create a lot of problems for oxygenation and also CO2 retention. You're going to snore, you're going to have time, you're always tired, you'll need 25 coffees a day because you cannot bring enough oxygen to your working muscle. Again, it's not a course on breathing, but very briefly, when you inhale, the oxygen doesn't go to your muscle right away. Oxygen, it goes to it's called alveoles, in the lungs. Each alveoli, they have molecules of hemoglobin, and hemoglobin on the alveoles, they capture 4 molecules of oxygen. You need to create pressure to release them. That's why with Justine this morning, we did hypoxia training. She was doing flywheel training, then on the bike, no breathing for 10 seconds all out, then breathing for 15 seconds at a higher gear. This imitates a lot when you train at altitude. And when they used to spend 2-3 weeks in Zermatt, when they came back here for the first World Cup, or they went to Finland, that was kind of low. They felt like they were never tired because their level of hemoglobin was very high of training with these techniques, but also at a base. Zermatt is around 1,700 meters, but at the ski at the top, it's almost 4,000 meters. I mean, your level of oxygen is very low. That's why, but before you do all the breathing techniques, all the Wim Hof, everything is good, but make sure that you have adequate diaphragm position, and it starts with a good posture. Next slide, please. See, that's one exercise that you could do. You just stand, either feet together, and then you rotate your head side to side, and you look at your thumbs. You want to do about 30 seconds of those. And like Justine's doing very well, her head doesn't bend. A lot of time you'll see side bending, she rotates well. For many of my clients, I will just put either a bean bag or feedback when they're alone, to have a feedback that they're able to move their head on a swivel. Do that once or twice a day, and you will see that your balance is going to get better, and you'll feel more your center of mass on your heels. Another technique that's really effective is to activate the pons. The pons are connected with your posterior chain. Justine vient sur le dos ici. This is a very good warm-up. La tête ici, ça va être parfait. This is a very good warm-up before you do abdominals, because you want to really put in position your hip extensors. Now, Lève les hanches. You're going to put les pieds au sol. Just raise your hips up. You want to lock in, not too high. You just want to lock in. Place your thumbs very wide. And I like a metronome around 120. She will hear it. You won't, because I have my headphones on. But I have it's called Pro Metronome. And it's very, very efficient to work on that. And then she will do about 30 seconds of these movements very fast. Only her eyes are moving and she's contracting her glutes very tight. That's for activating her extensor chain and also giving more room for her abdominals when she's going to start her workout. Because remember, what's coding the movement is the antagonist. You do one round but the metronome at 120 is very efficient because this is called horizontal saccade, very effective to create movement and activating your extensors. The next one will be the opposite. It's going to be a vertical. Tu vas juste t'asseoir au sol. At the beginning, you could have your feet flat. When you get more advanced, you could bring your feet up, but for today, feet flat. Bring one thumb up and a little higher than your head and a little lower. And now she's going to go up and down very fast, following the metronome. Again, this is going to work more the part of your midbrain, and that's in connection with your flexor chain. A lot of people that they can't do a full sit-up will have a very, very good, they'll see a big results on that. And that's a very good way to prime up the body before you do any type of core training. Merci. Now, while we're in that position, there's an exercise that's really good to warm up, and you could do that in bed. If you don't have a good movement in your spine and you're not used to it, you could use a little cushion behind as a feedback. Just reste en position assise. Now, arms in front. You have to round your back as you inhale, touch the pad, exhale as you arch your back looking up. You inhale, look down, exhale, look up. This warms up the whole proprioceptors of your spine. It activates, very good to do in bed, also in the morning. As it gets easier, you could move the pad a little further to create more movement. I recommend, if you tend to have a stiff back, in bed it's easier because the bed caves in. You could put even your hands on your knees. If it's too hard, you could put the hands on the knees and up, exhale, inhale, and movement, always using your eyes. You go up, you look down. About 10, 12 reps will have a very good effect on warming up the spine in the morning and also prior that we're going to do movements. Next slide, please. Those are exercises also to give room for your diaphragm. I always recommend that you could do one round before you do abs and one round after. Those are very effective. They're done with breathing, and they take a bit. If someone is really flexible, you never want to have the arms on the floor. You need to look at the ceiling. Your chin is back. There's a direct link in between your suboccipital muscle and the fascia and even your hamstring and your foot. We're like a sausage. Fascia is connected everywhere. When you create, you bring your chin back, retroversion of the pelvis, and then you breathe in through the nose. You open the rib cage. You exhale through the mouth, purse lips. Keep the opening, and you relax. Again, you breathe in, you open wide. You exhale, keep the opening, and back. Again, even if you're very flexible, don't put your elbow on the floor. You want to feel an opening in between this elbow and your tailbone to create movement. Again, you breathe in, nose, open, exhale, mouth hard, keep the opening, and you release. It will create a good opening of the diaphragm at the dome level. That's very interesting, and also increase vagal tone because your vagus nerve. The second one is more the intermediate part of your diaphragm. You want to be sideways. As she breathes in, she extends her arm, maintaining the tension. She exhales, keep the tension, and release. Breathe in, exhale hard through pursed lips, and release. You want to do about 10 reps. Breathe in, exhale, and release. The next one, you could place your hand behind your head. It's called a positive torsion. The first one she did was negative torsion for the dome. Now it's positive torsion for the pillars. The pillars are more at the base of your pelvis. Then you breathe in nose, you exhale, you breathe in, you push your elbow forward, you exhale, keep pushing, and you relax. You breathe in, inhale, push, 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 exhale, keep the opening, and relax. Like a wave. Breathe in, exhale, and relax. Do 10 of each on each side, and I guarantee you that you do that before you do core training. Although it's stretching, it's not static stretching, it will create a very good room to create better movement in your spine. What happened also as recovery, this is one of the best for recovery. We've tested dozens of technique after a big cardiovascular workout, and you agree that that's one of the quickest way to bring your heart rate down very quickly because of the stimulus of the vagus nerve. Vagal tone is connected with your stomach, your heart, your lungs, and secretes acetylcholine when you stimulate it. That's a very powerful neurotransmitter. That's why if you're stressed after a big day, do one round of that, couple of Aldoa, and you'll see you'll go to bed like a baby. Now, for the first exercise, I'm going to show you, we're going to show a bit of the biomechanic. See, the key is to move in certain angle, and most people, they're very weak at the sub-umbilical. Justin, you just lie down on your back. See, what I do with my athletes, I test them like this. Basically, what does the rectus do? Basically, it's flexion of the trunk on a stable pelvis and flexion of the pelvis on a stable trunk, or both at the same time. That's it. And both, see, like a hinge. See, that's what the rectus abdominis do. That's in dynamic. But in static, it helps the viscera, stabilize the spine, helps with the thoracic diaphragm to create more room and stabilize all the spine through and connection also with the pubic symphysis. That's why they don't have the same energy pathways in dynamic. I like to mix both, but for athletes, I will prefer that they have a better pelvic movement. Now, the first exercise will be very simple, subumbilical. How I teach it, if you're alone, you could put just your fingers on top of your knees. You make sure your head is down. For many people, they will need sometime, if they have a little more stiff neck or just a little towel or a little cushion behind the neck to avoid overarching, because you want to place your tongue on the roof of your mouth. You want to press the back of your neck on it, and you just want to exhale and raise your tailbone up and hold for about three to 4 seconds, and you go back down. You exhale and you go back down. If you have someone with a big lumbar curvature, you want to do internal range, meaning mettre les bras sur la poitrine. The reason why, you'll see, make sure that people don't touch the ground because they're going to use their lats to create the movement. Then arms across chest, you want to keep it at 90 degrees. She could use her own hands at the beginning, or if you have a trainer, the trainer will be here and exhale. Make sure that most people, you'll see, they'll do this, or they'll lift their head up too. You'll see they don't have good, or they'll swing. They'll swing that thing. They don't have control. Very important to control the portion of subumbilical. Again, on that subject, lower upper ab don't exist. It's one sheet. But we have what we call the Douglas arch, or some people will call it the Douglas arcade, that separates from depth. See, the subumbilical are not in the same area as the supraumbilical. They're more in front. The supra are more behind the Douglas arch. The internal and external oblique are both, bit part behind. I mean, if you look at cadavers, you'll see the Douglas, just research it, and that's what separates pretty much the sub to supra. But if she goes up like this, obviously, if I have a surface EMG, I will see some activation there. But this will be red, will be more pink, and this will be light pink. But when she goes like this, keeping her head down, that's going to be red, more dark pink, and then it will be more white. Very advanced athletes, people that they did circus, martial artists, gymnasts, or mogul skiers, they have a very good motor control. They're able to activate one part, the left side, the right side, without even movement. When you put your fingers there, if I tell Justine right away, she's going to activate and might feel it right under. But that's crucial for them when they did these aerial movement. But aesthetically also has a big fact, because it makes it keeps your viscera. Most people with, like we call that the pooch belly, it's their viscera or push forward. It's not that they have a lot of visceral fat, they don't have enough tone in their abdomen. They do a lot of heavy lifting. That's why in the old days, Vince Gironda, the bodybuilding guru, didn't want his athletes to do too heavy because he had that. But I mean, he was kind of right. If my strength, I train a lot of Olympic weightlifters, and believe me, they all have good waist. They don't have like the big waist, and they're very powerful, but they do a lot of these exercises, not all day because they need to train also, but those are part of the accelerate movement that they do every day. Now again, very simple, rectus abdominis. You go up and you exhale, hold it for about 3 to 4 seconds and back down. As it gets better, you could increase the movement with the exhalation. The reason why you exhale is to create a difficult movement. Normally, let's say she would work on strength, and I don't want to work on segmental. She would inhale, she would push hard, and then exhale at the end. But that's not the purpose of analytical segmental. You want to work your muscle to the hardest, meaning when you exhale, there's no Valsalva maneuver. You don't have any lever outside of what I want to work. If you're alone, also to increase a bit of the movement, a lot of my clients, they told me that when I'm not around, this helped them a lot to feel the movement. Although the band will create a bit more tension, it gives them feedback. And what I've seen a lot of time when a person has a hard time to really work segmentally, lifting their tailbone up, creating a good pressure on L3, the TheraBand or any type of band seems to have a very good effect. Same when I combine it with a pad between the knees. There's a direct link in between the adductor, ADD, with your pelvic floor, with your abdominals. Very important to work the pelvic floor, especially when you exhale, and also for hockey players, for groin injuries, or soccer player, it will help them a lot. Then you could play with that. At the beginning, try to get the movement without, because there's a bit of proprioception involved. As it gets better, you could play with it with the pad to create a little more adductor involvement and pelvic floor. It will not be pure, but it will help a lot, because like if you work with hockey players, we only have 10, 12 weeks. You need to progress them faster. And also with the band, I will create a little more movement, a little more tension. Then from the same position, you could work on your sub-umbilical obliques. If you cross the leg on top, now when it's called cephalic, the leg that's closer to your head is crossed, and you want to work your internal oblique. Remember the internal oblique, remember of that picture, they're very low and they're more back. Also, they help with flexion of the trunk, but also they help in side bending, ipsilateral side bending. Then when the athlete will use that, that will be the movement they will do, a bit like almost like a rotation, up and out a bit, gently. Exhale, the movement without swinging and movement. A lot of time when I coach, I ask the person either at home to put your foot on the wall, same as the first one. If someone has really have difficulties, feet against the wall, keep them against the wall and go up and down. Same when you'll do one leg. That's for the subumbilical internal oblique of the right side. But in the same movement, I want to work her external oblique on the left side, and that will create a positive torsion. She needs to pre-incline a bit to the right because she's going to work the left, and exhale, bringing the knee to the opposite shoulder. Again, without swinging. Believe me, only that she will feel, because we haven't done that for a while. And exhale hard. At the beginning, I like a bit of isometric at the top for about a second or two. Isometrics are very good to engram a movement. A goal is not to swing, to move. It has to move segmentally, very slow. Let the muscle do the movement, not the movement stimulate the muscle. It's very different, because when you do this, you engram more the movement, but what's going to happen when you move, they're going to participate faster. And that's the key. Again, I like time under tension with these things. When you start at the beginning, you want to get to about 15 to 20 seconds of movement. I like a metronome, gives you a rhythm up and down. And the best metronome is your breathing. Because Justine is more advanced, and I brought her a new gift because I got my new balloons. Those are punching balloons. This will create a lot more tension into her abdominals, because then she has a feedback in her mouth, and eccentrically, now bringing her knees up, arms across, and exhale in the balloon, you will see that she will, that's it, exhale hard and lift. That's it. Breathe in nose, and it teaches you to inhale through the nose, exhale to the mouth. That's really tough. Feel the difference? That's really depth. Why? Because she has a lot more participation from the inside and with the transverse, and a lot more muscle. If you had a surface EMG, you would see like, whoa, it's like before singing alone, now you got your backup singers. That's why these little balloons are really effective to create. Again, do a couple of workouts just alone. Then you feel, okay, I need a little more tension. I use the band. Oh, I need to a little more tension. There's no recipe. Everybody has, if you has a background in dance and gymnastics, mogul skiing, figure skating, they will progress really, really fast, especially if they have to compete in a competition. The balloon is the ice cream on the cake, but you could try it if someone, I've had very good success with people that they can't even do it. And when they have the balloon in their mouth, they're able to do it because they're focusing on their breath. And the exhalation is very crucial to create the movement on this. And it will cure a lot of the paradoxal movement. We could do that again with the oblique, same thing. With the external oblique, internal oblique, you could play with that. But take your time and make sure that the movement is very, usually I like when we start something that for 2 weeks, you do 1 round a day, every day. You don't go to your max. If you're good for 20, do about 15. Many research have shown that if you don't get too sore the day after and you repeat, your volume is going to create an adaptation. And that's going to help you. Again, don't do that before a competition. And this is very effective to work the subumbilical. When you work the supra, one area that's really difficult is when most people, they're used to do these movements of like crunches. But this is just external range. Not many activities happen in that. If you work with fighters, if you work with mogul skiers, that they have to do a pike. If you work with divers, they need to be very quick in the movement. One way to do it is to create a, that's, I'll even have probably to help just sit on this because we haven't done that for a while. Now place your heels on something. By bracing the heels, you're going to create a connection with your hamstring. Now sit up completely. Give me out your hands. Now it's going to be internal range. See, internal range means that you're working, you're shortening the muscle, but you're letting go a bit. You're stimulating the tendon more at the proximal. Then you go down a bit and back up. Exhale, inhale, exhale. It's not easy. Then she's strong, man. That's good. I haven't done that with her a lot. This is really, really effective. Pushing your heels down, very, very effective. If you're alone, I'll show you a technique. What you do, you take this behind your feet. You grab it with your hands, apply a bit, and then go down to your max and back up. As it gets easier, load more eccentrically and pull yourself. See, you take it a little, exactly. She's extending her arms on the way down, and she helps herself with concentric. That's really good. A lot of time I will tell them, okay, stay there. Now stay and keep the tension. Keep the tension isometrically. Let go the hands. Exhale, exhale, and go back again. Those are very good movements. First of all, I'm not overloading, but it's a good integration with the hip flexor, but also with the supra abdominal muscle. That's on top of the Douglas arch, because in our sport, in many sports, you need to be able to move very, very quickly your trunk in a very short range. Same thing when you go back up, you cross your arms over your chest and you'll do the oblique. If she wants to work her left internal oblique, she will go down a bit and more like a side bend. She will go down a bit and a side bend, and making sure that she applies pressure downward. She goes down on one side and back up. Usually I will prefer to do one side. If I want to work her external oblique on that side, cross arms over chest, and then she will come on this way and back. She will come, that's good. Now we're going to work on, that's really good. Getting the movement, keeping the tension. Then in one, she's actually good. Did you practice? That's pretty good. That's a lot of people you'll see they'll flip back, especially when there's nothing holding their feet. Obviously, the higher your feet, the tougher it gets. I prefer at the beginning about 45 degrees. This is like a foam box. It helps you a lot. But if you practice that, I guarantee you, let's say you got a test for hockey. Sadly, again, there's a lot of combine asking you to do full sit-ups. Now, I hope without holding, that's going to help you a lot. But if you work with fighters, you work with athletes that they need to be in that position and create, even golfers will benefit a lot of these exercises. Those are really, really good. As for my athletes, I don't give a lot of supra-umbilical outside of loading them on the floor. I prefer to keep more the segmental for internal range and also with the sub-umbilical because we have a certain amount of time. Another part that's very interesting is the hinge. You want to work both parts. Now sit up straight. Now arms across chest. And then she would do bend the knee at 90 degrees. She will go down a bit and back up. That's really tough because that's internal range hinge. That's really difficult. Oh yeah. Then if she does full range, this is a full range hinge. Now as she goes up, if she twists to the right and left, that's more external oblique. As she goes, if she goes more in a side bending, she's going to work more internal oblique, and you could play with it. Then exhaling. She has very good motor control, but believe me, that's not easy. And she always exhale. If she puts the balloon in her mouth, that's going to create a lot more tension. And if you, again, if you want to feel your abs, just do a couple of those. Start with, I always recommend starting with supra umbilical in the short range as a warm up after you've did the round back, arch back. before you did the diaphragm, and then go to the sub. It's a lot easier and you get a better motor control. I work on time under tension. I like to start maybe 15, 20 seconds. In her case, we go up to 30 seconds in movement with a metronome. Also, lateral movements are very interesting. Mets-toi face à là. See, I like to work couche-toi sur le côté. This time, I like to use a pad between the knees. Basically, she will stabilize her upper body. She will squeeze the pad. You could use a pad or a little towel, and she will only lift her legs inside bending. That's going to work different part as she exhale hard. Keeping the legs a bit in front because you want to remove a bit of the arch, retroversion, and then you lift. You will see that people will tend to go backward. You want to correct them to stay forward. It's not a big movement. At the beginning, it's okay to put your hand down. Make sure you rest your neck. As it gets easier, you could put your hand on your hip. And that's really effective. And for someone that starts, we only use isometrics. You hold it for about 5 to 10 seconds. You go back down a bit and back up as you exhale. Very hard. Very interesting to stabilize also your SI joint. Very good. Frontal plane movement will activate, will help into rotational sport. Also, we could do keeping the leg bent, met les bras sur la poitrine. Now she could use trunk over pelvis, raising, exhaling. That's really difficult to do internal range. I would need to help her either with a band to help her and met le coude plus haut. That's it. You want to leave the elbow off the floor. That's really hard. And making sure your neck is very straight. After a while, you'll be able to do both at the same time, lifting and back, exhaling and back. Those are really, you don't need to do a lot. You'll see it's going to cramp very fast. That's why for a lot of people, we like to do one round, do one diaphragm exercise. Montre-le celui que tu es à plat ventre. You go face down on the floor, hands under your forehead, and you do lumbo-diaphragmatic breathing. So you breathe in nose, stomach goes out, the diaphragm goes out, breathe in and breathe out. You do about 15, 20 reps. That's going to release tension also on your rectus, and it's going to help a lot. Un peu plus de rétroversion du bassin. You want to barely feel your knees on the floor and neutral spine, and you breathe through that 10, 12 times, and you'll see when you go back on your back to do a second round, you will feel a lot looser and you're able to do. Generally, do just the rectus in internal range, about 15 seconds, rest 15. Then you could do external oblique, rest a bit, and then internal oblique, always in that shortened range for the supra. Then you do the breathing face down, then you go on your back, you'll do the subumbilical, 15, 20 seconds as you exhale. Then you'll cross the leg, you do internal oblique, you don't need to cross, then you go right away external, you recross internal oblique, then external, and then you will redo the breathing again, 15, 20 reps. Then you finish with the side movement. The last exercise I'm going to show you, it's a dynamic movement that we do for side bridge. Mets-toi sur le côté sur ton coude. Make sure you have an adequate pad. For a beginner or someone doesn't have that much strength, both knees together. But I don't want a static. I want to have a dynamic movement. T'expires, puis tu montes and back down. That's good. At the top, back, up and down. Exhaling. When this is too easy, extending the legs, but the top leg in front a bit. Staggered stand. Again, up and down, exhaling. Good range. She does internal range. You could go full range depending on the sport. Again, this will code the movement and you exhale hard. If you had the balloon in your mouth, that's going to create a lot more tension as she does it. As she exhales, breathing out with in the balloon. And because I want to stabilize her viscera, I will play another game. She will stay there, she won't move, and she's going to breathe in and out very hard, very deep and hard in the balloon, and very hard. That's going to play another role, more instability. We got a combo of both. But it's a little more advanced. For a lot of people that suffers from either back pain, I like that they just go bent knee, just go up a bit, use a balloon. You might be surprised how much it's going to release without movement. Reste en haut and just breathe in and out. You might be surprised how it's going to be very effective for releasing tension in their back. Obviously, I do both sides. The advanced version of the side bridge is on your hand. Fait que mets-toi sur ta main. C'est the higher, comme ça, tu peux faire l'autre bord. And then you extend. That's a little longer movement, and that's the advanced version of the side bridge. Obviously, the further away your hand's going to be, the tougher it gets. Staggered stance, feet together. Even like for her as an athlete, she will do these movements up and down a bit. She will keep the leg up and move up. Very efficient to combine either on a static or either with the balloon or moving the pelvis with the leg. But again, those are advanced permutation. You need to master the first ones before you do that. We even attach bands. We even use ankle weights in her case. And that's going to depend on the quality you want and the athlete. We even do with the sub-umbilical, we'll use a bit of a dumbbell. We'll use a medicine ball. We use a lot of lateral, mets-toi sur le dos. When I'm with my athletes, what we do a lot, mets tes jambes dans les airs, I will be sideways to them, and I will create a lateral traction, and she has to go up and down. Obviously, because I'm pulling her toward her right, she's going to fire a lot more with her left, and I will switch side. I will change the angle. But what happened is that when I let go after, when she does it, a lot of time it's easier. The pelvis will feel because there's no perturbation. If you're alone, you could do that on your own. You grab this in your hand, you create a traction a bit, and you go up and down. You could bring your arm a little more wide or down on the floor, creating traction. That's really good. Again, if someone does it to you, or you could attach yourself to a pulley. We use the flywheels with that. There's many permutation. That's a more advanced version, but if you have an athlete that has a hard time to engram the movement, many times a lateral traction does the job without doing 20 reps. Do 4 or 5 reps, retest, recheck with the pons, recheck with the vertical saccade through the midbrain. All these things is to create an adaptation at the brain and connection with your fascia. And believe me, if you do that for a while, practice like 1 round a day for the next 2 weeks, please send me a text and you should see the difference. Always finish with breathing techniques to create room. I recommend to do the same breathing we did with the diaphragm sideways. Also, standing up with the hands on your knees, doing the vacuum, especially if you're outdoor, you can't breathing in and out very, very deeply. Those are very effective. Harvard University many years ago did a research on one of the best recovery, and it was that kind of wave movement through the diaphragm. It creates, it's called ZOA, zone of apposition of the diaphragm, because there's 3 parts. You got the middle part, the dome, and the pillars, and you have to stack them in a proper way. This helps a lot to create a good oxygenation and a good removal of CO2. And it's a natural position. When you're out of breath, you go like this, and you just do these waves. Sometime between the sets, you will see that, and it's going to be very effective. Over time, you will see that you'll be able to do when you use segmental movement, it will help a lot more when you do like the leg raise. Instead of swinging all these movement, you'll be able to use your pelvis to create the movement without too much of upper. Is it pure? No, but very effective as you exhale if you combine with the balloon, because now there's no more feedback. The floor gives you what we call a transcendental reference. It's a lot easier, but in reality, unless you lie down all day, you want to be able to do these type of movement while you're standing up. But it will help with your movement. I guarantee you, she could testify on it. And a lot of time, if you have hockey players, a lot of them, they have sports hernia. Many skiers, they have hip problem. That really helps to stabilize all these movements. If you have any question, Alex, we could answer a couple of questions. And he has my message. And
Sure.
See, I was not bad. I was right on time.
Yeah, it's been an hour 2 minutes. I think that this is your personal best.
Yeah, but I have my partner here. She's really good on that. She's like.
So guys, this is the time of questions. So please feel free to write them down in the chat. In the meantime, I'll put an offer for you guys. So Paul, maybe you can talk more about our online seminar. We will start at the end of October. So it's going to be 6 sessions of 2 hours on Thursday afternoons at 2 p.m. Eastern. And every session will be recorded. But Paul, can you talk to us about the content of that specific online seminar?
Actually, the first 2 sessions, I will be in Portugal. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be 8 o'clock. I'll try to set up my camera on the beach, but I'll be in Algarve back in that time. And basically, we're going to structure it a bit like a training camp. Like we'll do abdominals, we'll do lower extremity. I want you guys to have the experience, like if you would be in my garage, couple of quick tests. See, without being a posturology, just like make sure, what are my main tips? Because the biggest issue like we have with athletes, they don't have a long off season, and we have to make the best of we can, and also in season. And this is basically what I'm going to share my 41 years of experience. And at Swiss, we'll do the same. At Swiss this year, we're going to do like, I'm very honored. I'll be with Brian Peters, ex-NFL guys. We'll do a whole breeding, but I'm going to bring this back in our format of 6 sessions because it's going to be 2 hours. I'll be able to go more in depth with the breeding. Every session, let's say for energy system, I will show you a trick to improve your metabolic reflex. Basically, the metabolic reflex, if you ever ran a 400 meter, this morning she felt her metabolic reflex kick in. It's basically, if you're on the ice, you didn't warm up properly, you're skating hard and you feel your legs like lead. It happened to them sometime. There was a delay with snowstorm or whatever, an announcement, and they always told me, oh my God, especially Deer Valley was a very long trail altitude. And if we don't reset, that's why in Val Saint Côme we're almost undefeated, because we could bring them in the gym, reset. But that's the goal, is to delay the onset of the metabolic reflex, to be able, you allow yourself to work at very, very high intensity for a longer period of time. Also, when you do all these exercises, what happened is that your metabolic rate increase a lot, and that's the good news. And that's why you rarely see UFC guys or fighters kind of fat. It's not as, like if you look at sprinters, a lot of time they're a lot leaner than long distance, because they have a very, very high tolerance at very, very high speed and high tension. And that's the key for that. And I'll go through all different type of program, from upper body, lower body, to make sure I'll have a couple of segments for house training. Like for them, when they were on the World Cup, sometime now Zoom is there, but before we didn't have Zoom, and they were stuck with this and a towel in a closet almost. And okay, you have to be creative. They're on the World Cup. I will not see them for maybe 5 months, but they have to maintain. They're in season. Same thing when you travel. I have a lot of clients that travel. I'll show them tips that you could do in your house and also at the gym. That's going to be the content. And what you know me, Alex, I always adjust all the time also because that's very easy to I like it's like that's why I always refuse a lot of internship because I like to wing it a bit based on all my athlete feels today. I had a set program, but I will go around and that's really hard to teach. But there's tricks like for the abdominals, for the breathing, is your athlete at par. Like this morning, Justin came right after a meeting, and I knew that the first set, that's why I changed the program a bit, a little lighter, but we built it up at the end of the workout because she was just finishing a meeting. And you see that I don't want to hurt her and I want to maximize. It's not when your athlete comes out of the house on their feet, it's that they're able to repeat constantly the effort. And that's really what my athletes they do. We touch wood, they're rarely injured, and they're able to compete for a long period of time.
And because you took some of your precious time to be there with us on that webinar, we offer you an additional $100 off the registration of that online seminar. But the code, so you can use promo code CORE100 it's valid until this Sunday. So you'll have the links to the online seminar in the email you're going to receive in a few minutes after that webinar, as well as the promo code you can use to register to that online seminar that is going to start at the end of October. So enough promotion. We do have questions, Paul. So a question from David. I'll translate it. So how many times do we have to do the exercises for RVO to have a good effect? So 15 seconds, 30, 60, 120.
Usually 30 seconds should be sufficient, but it depends. If they do it well, like Justin did, always keep an eye on. A lot of time you will see they will bend the neck on the side. They have to be also a metronome is good. What's the distance? I prefer on the video, on the picture you have, I prefer with feet together. Like for Justin, we'll do it a lot with one leg to have an effect, but not everybody. Usually 30 seconds is a good time.
Perfect, thank you. Another question would be, when do you place, let's say, core training in a specific session? You do it as a warm-up, at the end, in the middle?
Depending on what you have. Like when they're going to be loaded a lot, I will do a bit of supra and a bit of more stability work with the balloon, like side bridging, different type of planks, but with the balloon mix. And let's say we do a very heavy leg day, and I'll finish with more of the subumbilical to create room. But if there is a too much lumbar curvature or your athlete has a bit of SI joint problem, it's not a bad idea to start with a couple of hip extension, just one or two sets of subumbilical in internal external oblique. This is where you might feel some of my athletes respond very well for that. But generally speaking, if I'm going to do heavy loading on the lower extremity, I keep it at the end. I will do one round, then we'll do a bit of myofascial stretching, and then Eldoa. That would be my sequence.
Perfect, thank you. And can you show us, because most of people watching now or on replay are strength coaches or personal coaches with, I don't want to say average Joes, but not high athletes as Justin, but can you show us some testing that coaches can do to see if the core is strong enough for?
I mean, the first thing, it's not only core strong enough. It's like you just take your hands. I have here. I have a level, but you don't need that. See, I'll always check at the top of the iliac. Is it crooked or not? Make sure it's a stable base, or just with your fingers, and making sure that one hip is not higher than the other one, and in the back to see if the pelvis is straight, one cheek is not more forward than the other one, and you check if the posture is not too much deviated in front. And those will be very effective, because be careful, guys, about testing. See, I used to test a lot like the Kendall and Kendall, juste coucher sur le dojo. It's kind of a reliable test, but if I train her for a couple of minutes, she will pass the test. Basically, the Kendall and Kendall, you place your hand right under L3, both legs are up in the air, arms across chest, lock your knees, toes are in, internal rotation. Gently, the person keeps the tension on my hand and go down, and then there's a score. That's 1, that's 2, that's 3, that's 4, and all the way down and up, it's 5. But I've seen athletes pass those tests, and I saw injuries also happen to them. That's why I don't really test. One of the tests, it's an exercise, is what they do. I want to see not more strength, all the brain functions when they use certain part. If I see the head comes up, or I'll see them jump or twist, that's going to be more an observation test, because you can't really test strength of the, even if I would stay, put her in a plank, it's completely stupid because there's no transfer into performance. I want to see how she integrates the movement in her brain. And that's, today she's very good. Tomorrow she may have like too many meetings, whatever. It could be a bit wrong. That's why I test my athletes every day through observation. The Kendall and Kendall could be a test if you have access also to what we used to use a lot, like a blood pressure cuff that you put under the spine, and then we pump it up under L3, and we ask the athlete to lift your legs up in the air. You press as much as you can, keeping your legs straight. I have the dial in front of me. Press your lower back on it, and then lower the leg to see if she's able to maintain the tension on it if it doesn't move on the dial. That's another. In physiotherapy, they use that a lot. Merci. It's a Chattanooga, we call that. And those are cheap. The one I bought them on Amazon, but you could buy some very expensive one for physio if you do a lot of research. But I don't really do that anymore because I like to test my athletes on a daily basis through my eyes or how they move.
Perfect, thank you. One last question. For those who are beginners into core training like you taught us today, how many exercises would you tell the coaches to ask the clients to do? In a session, in a week, how do you split those multiple exercises? Do you different exercise from day to day? How would you prescribe it to a beginner?
I like just to keep it simple when they can. Obviously, that's why I showed permutation with the bands, the short range. Like you're in that position, you're very tall, you go down rectus, and then you'll do a bit of obliques, and in that position with your heels as much as you can. Again, with the higher your feet are high, the tougher it gets. You want to elevate them on a little platform, then you will go down on the same. When you go on the floor, you will do the regular sub-umbilical very gently, about 15 seconds, cross the leg, then you will do internal oblique, then on the same side, external oblique, you will turn around. And that's about the extent, and then you will lie sideways, lifting both legs up and a side bridge. That gives you about 6 exercises. I do 1 round, but I would like at the beginning for the first 2 weeks, every day they do it in a proper way. The methodology is more important than the volume and the intensity. It's how you do it. When you excel completely, it's different. If you use a balloon, you have to really focus. No music, no dancing around. And that's why in my garage, there's no noise, nothing. And because when you do analytical segmental reinforcement, it's not only a muscle thing, it's a brain thing. You need to be in control of what you're doing to be able to move with these muscles.
All right. Thank you very much, Paul, for all that knowledge today. Thank you, Justine, for being a super top model.
Merci, Justine, because she doesn't hear me. I have my headphones.
Okay, perfect.
Merci.
So hope you enjoyed the webinar, guys. You will get the the replay in the email in a few minutes. So feel free to go ahead and go over all the stuff that Paul covered today. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll see you next time for another webinar. Have a good one. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.